Hello, everyone. This is Kat Caldwell, and you're listening to Pencils and Lipstick, and this is episode 230. And in the future, will technically have come back from Cuba, but I am recording this ahead of time just in case. You never know. I might be sick. I might be fine. Who knows? But today I have with me Claire Taylor. If you don't know Claire Taylor, you should know Claire Taylor. Let's see. This is a book by Claire Taylor, which you definitely should read. And I'm holding up Reclaim Your Author Career. And she is coming out with a new book. And I just participated with her on the Kickstarter called Sustain Your Author Career. And we are going to talk a lot about that, what she means by it, what the book is going to be about, everything. So, Claire Taylor is a fiction writer, but she's also the owner and fiction strategist for FFS Media. Through her company, FFS Media, she publishes her own fiction and helps authors through her story alignment and author alignment services, as well as her courses, masterclasses, and workshops. She publishes fiction under 4 pen names. Oh my goodness, so many. But she's also really getting into the nonfiction sphere, as I said, with her Reclaim Your Author Career and Sustain Your Author Career. So she gets deep into the Enneagram. She uses the Enneagram framework to help authors create careers they love and stories that stand out. And if you guys haven't taken a workshop with her, either for like your author career or to help create your characters using the Enneagram, I highly suggest that you do it. I encourage you to do that. I am going to have the links below for you so that you can check out all of her workshops. In the moment that we were talking, she still had space for her retreat, which is really small. So if you want to go on her retreat, you kind of have to get in there really quickly. But we're going to talk about mostly author career, a lot of Enneagram, how to sustain it. Things are changing in the industry yet again, guys. Like people are having launches that are what we would have considered 5 years ago flopping because they aren't selling thousands or tens of thousands, they're selling maybe hundreds. And that's like people who are well known. I have talked to several people in the last few weeks and months, and there just seems to be this shift and this dip, right? So whether it is the inflation or election year or, all the like war things happening, people are not reacting to books the same way that they did. And I think a lot of that is kind of like COVID is over, people are back at their jobs. We like have to, work and stuff. And as authors, that's rough because we are selling people a product that they don't have to have, right? They can go without. And so it's really important that you understand really why you're in it, what you're doing, how to keep a good mindset through it all. I think it's also important to have like a framework and a structure of support. So all these things together to keep you motivated to write, to keep you motivated to keep selling your book, to finding the right readers. All of this is very important. And I think that you're going to find this conversation with Claire enlightening, but also encouraging. So before we get into the interview, please share the show with everyone, especially this show. If you've never shared a show, share this show with all your writer friends. They're going to want to hear Claire talk. And if you would give us a review, give me a review. I don't know why I say us. There's no one else here. It's just me. Give me a review, give Pencils and Lipstick a review on any platform that you are listening to it on. If you want to see us, you can head over to YouTube and find Pencils and Lipstick there. And you can see my beautiful face. It's always half cloud, like shadowed, because I only have one window here. And I can't figure out lighting because, again, it's just me here. There's no us. And you can see my guests there as well. And I think that's about it. If you guys have anyone you want on the show, or if you want to be on the show, you can pitch me on any social media or at my website, catcaldwell.com. All the links are always in the show notes below. You can get on my writer's newsletter, on my reader's newsletter, and you can pre-order the Bended Duet. That's news too, huh? I think I told you guys that last week. So anyway, all that to say, let's get into the interview. I feel like, I could talk forever, but you guys really come here to listen to my guests. So let's head on over. All right. So, hi, Claire Taylor. How are you doing? It's nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, I'm doing great in the middle of a Kickstarter. So, mine's in a few different places,
Yes.
but
Well,
I'm
you look
I'm
great for being in the middle.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm doing well and I'm really glad to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, I was excited to have you come back. And honestly, like I was so busy that I didn't realize that you had a new book coming out until I saw your Kickstarter and I was like, well, I need that one. So I need to sustainability. So tell me a little bit about this new one because I love Reclaim Your Author Career. I tell everyone that they should read it. But what is the new one and how is it different?
So the new one is Sustain Your Author Career. So Reclaim Your Author Career is really about starting to evaluate sort of where you've gotten off track, where you have
Mm,
built a business you thought you should build rather than one that's aligned with who you are.
mm,
And I use the Enneagram framework to sort of help people sort through some of those questions.
great.
And then sustain your author career is sort of this acceptance that figuring out the alignment is not happily ever after,
Oh,
right?
bummer.
Exactly. There's sort of a whole world out there that is
Yes.
going to be tempting you to get off track, that's going to be distracting you, that's going to be triggering you, that's going to be making it difficult to write sometimes, no matter how aligned your plan is. So,
Okay.
sustain your author career is about sort of looking at these blocks and figuring out how do we evaluate what is actually the problem here? What patterns are causing me to fall into this same trap over and over again? And how do I start to get out? And so it's really like a toolkit for a long-term career. So you
Okay.
don't have to, spend a year wondering what's wrong. You can start to evaluate it, learn parts about yourself, um, and then be able to go, oh, yeah, it's this thing, and make that little tweak and get back on track.
Okay. So do you need to I guess you probably need to know your Enneagram because it goes
It
also up
helps.
with the Enneagram. Okay.
Yeah, it does help. But I do also include descriptions in the
Great.
book of the different types. So if you're only vaguely familiar with it, you can read the intro. I talk about what the Enneagram is, how it works, why it works, and
Yes.
that I describe the 9 types as, what they look like as a writer, what each type tends to look like as a writer, what they tend to think, feel, and do. And there's probably going to be one, maybe two that really jump out to anyone.
Okay.
And so, if you're between two, you can read the book, and as you read through, you're gonna be like, okay, I think I am this one
Right.
over the other. And then if you still have trouble, there's assessments online. You can come talk to someone like me. I can do differentiating questions with you,
Right.
and then you can go back through. But the great thing about a book is, if you read it through thinking maybe you're a type 3 and you get some things out of that, and then it turns out you're a type 5, and you're just going to get more things out of the book. So you can go
Yes.
back and reread.
Yeah. That's what I really like about the Enneagram and like the personality strengths is you can pretty much learn like it's not wasted time learning as you're
Mm-hmm.
going. And you talk about like being a 3 wing 4, 3 wing 2 and just sort of like seeing where you are at the
Mm-hmm.
what's going to work out better for you. I do think it does help, but what what made you write this? Because you have like you do talk about sustaining our career a lot in your podcast with Brian and like you talking whenever I see you on Instagram. Um have you been through burnout? Have you seen burnout? Like is that why you would
Yes.
see thought that this was a good idea or we need this?
Well, yeah, I went through burnout in 2018,
Okay.
and so it was towards the end of 2018. I was doing the rapid release. It wasn't an aligned tactic for me,
Mm,
but as an Enneagram 1, if anyone knows about the reformers, they will know that we are, the kings and queens of white knuckling our way through things. We can suppress any feelings we need to. We can,
oh no.
just grit our teeth and get through it. So, excuse me. So I was doing that. I wrote 11 books in 2018 and then felt like I never want to write a book again. And so
Yeah.
that is a problem. If you're going to be a writer,
Right.
it becomes problematic if you decide you never want to write a book again.
Yeah. But 11
So
books, that's a lot of that's a book a month,
it
pretty much.
it was too many.
Yeah.
Right? For me, it was. Some people can do that, and that's fine. That's great for them. It was way
Yeah,
too
some
many for
people
me.
can, but that's
I
how
don't know that some people can every year
every
for
year. Right.
20 years,
Right.
So that's where we start to look long term, and things that seem like a good idea stop being a good idea.
Yeah. If
Um,
you're in your 30s and you feel like you're 80, maybe it's not a good
right.
idea.
Right. There are clues. There are always
There are
clues.
these clues.
So, I mean, doing that in to myself in 2018 kind of got me thinking about, okay, well,
Okay.
how do I align so that, I can look long term and I see this path where I can consistently produce work,
Right.
because it is a long game,
Yeah.
being an author. We pretended as an industry that it wasn't for a while, and then that
Yeah.
has not worked. But mostly I've been moving into sustainability because of all the coaching I do with authors, because I see the same patterns coming up over and over
Okay.
again. A lot of people don't come to me until they're in a crisis.
Yeah.
And so I get to kind of inspect the nature of these crises, and then, using the certifications I have with the Enneagram, being able to kind of dissect what are the patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that are getting them into
Okay.
this. And there are a lot more people in crisis in our industry right now than there
Really?
used to be. Yes. A lot of people who made 6, 7 figures back in 2017, 2016, even into 2020, are now struggling to pay their bills.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it happens. I mean, this is the shift. This is the
Yeah.
unpredictability of the world we live in, and the industry in particular. And so, really, the focus of what we can do for ourselves is building a shelter inside us, so
Mm.
that we aren't dependent, our well-being isn't dependent on what's happening in the external world. Because when we start to believe that our well-being is determined solely based on what's happening
Yeah.
in the external world, then there's a lot of opportunities for us to be very not okay.
Yeah.
um, and especially this year, people in the United States have a very rough and testing October and November.
Right.
And,
And there
you know,
afterwards, whatever happens.
right. Yeah, October, November is very optimistic. It's probably going to be August, September, October, November, December, January, February. It's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is that all of the indicators, all of the facts that we're seeing, all of what's transpiring would lead someone to believe that this is going to be the same or worse than 2020 and
Hmm.
2016. And I know that a lot of authors felt very out of control of their attention, of their emotions, of their life, and their
Yeah.
ability to get writing done, during 2016, 2020, and some of the
Or
time in between.
yeah, or even to market their book, right? Because there was a
Yep.
crisis in 2020 of so many things happening in the States where you felt like an idiot talking about anything other
Mm-hmm.
than
Right.
the
And
current
so
events, right?
I would ask authors, do you enjoy the way you felt during those periods? Did you enjoy the way that the emotions you had? Did you enjoy the sensations you had in your body, the stress? Were you proud of the way you were able to connect and relate to the people around you?
Mm,
Did you really like the amount of focus you had? Because if you didn't, and you haven't done any of this work yet, now's the time,
right.
because you can change the way you feel. It's still going to be a storm. It's still going to be bad. There are still systemic things that are happening to people. So we don't want to say, it's your sole job to fix yourself.
Right.
And learn to thrive in this broken system. It's not really that, but there is a lot that we can do to make ourselves feel like shelter, make ourselves feel like home, so that
Hmm.
no matter what happens, we can continue to write, because these stories are important.
Right. Right.
In 2020, people felt silly, like you said, marketing, but everybody was home and everybody needed an escape,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there will always be needs for stories, because people think in terms of stories. And so I think that, not just for the greater good, but do you want your income to continue? Do you
Yes.
want to continue being able to sell books and take care of, some people it's their sole income, some people it's their ability to take a vacation, some people it just, making money from their books is like, yeah, I have a little extra I can throw into retirement, or I can invest in something else. So whatever your money is doing for you, do you want it to continue?
Right.
And that is largely dependent on if you can make yourself sustainable. You can't have a sustainable author career if you are not sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're obviously spot on. And I think that what you said before of like you're not it's not like this will fix everything, and like it's not
Mm-mm.
like it will make everything go away, but there is a difference. Like when I started really looking into the Enneagram and like the strengths, because I hadn't connected. I understand psychology and I understand personalities, but I hadn't quite connected like with one in particular. But those two I think really help you understand why you're having these reactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which gives you a beginning at least to be like,
Mm-hmm.
what then do I want to do today? Especially like let's go back to like 2020 was a crazy year, like COVID, and we
Mm-hmm.
had, issues systemically with racism in America, and then we had the election. Like that's a lot. It feels
It
so
was a
far
lot.
away. It was like all in 6 months. That's
Mm-hmm. It was a lot. And it was more for some people than it was for others.
right,
Not just because, of course, if with all of the protests in the summer of 2020, it's going to affect people of color more to see that, right?
right,
So I'm
right.
not just talking about that. I'm talking about within every group, there were some
Hmm.
people who were able to have more resilience
Right.
and be able to continue on. And there are some people that fell apart.
Yeah.
And the
Yes.
difference is that ability to pause between stimulus and response and
Yeah.
make that decision of
Right.
how do I want to have acted here? How do I want to feel? And understanding that our feelings are these almost chemical reactions to our
Right.
beliefs and the reality of the situation. So,
Yeah.
we can look at our beliefs, we can change these things. I mean, neuroplasticity is a beautiful thing.
Right.
There's a lot that people say, that's just me, that's just how I am, that, you know, it doesn't have to be.
Yes.
Life can be easier for you.
Yes. Yes. I like what you're saying too. Like, of course, there are people, depending on where they live, what they grew up with, what ethnicity or color they are, that all has something to do with it. But you're right. It has also to do with just who you are, how you perceive the world, how you react to the world. And I think that it not only gives you an idea of how to change your own mindset, like after reading your book, I was able to then understand other people in my industry and other people around me, and to not force them to change the way because this works for me, therefore it must work for you, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I could say, oh, okay, well, what I did, I don't think is going to work. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and just listen right now. Like it definitely helps with those different relationships too, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this high stress environment.
Yeah, and while the patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that tend to cluster around particular Enneagram types, and they rise from the core fear. So each type is defined by its core fear. And that core fear pretty much determines where our attention goes.
Okay.
And then from that attention, we have these patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that tend to arise. So not everyone who is a type 2 will have the exact same patterns, but they're going to recognize a large bulk of these patterns.
Okay.
Um, and so recognizing those patterns is sort of revolutionary. It can be a huge eureka moment for you because those patterns are the water you have been swimming in. You
Mm,
do not realize that those are patterns. You just think that's the way people function. So, for
right.
like you're saying, for a lot of people, learning about the Enneagram, not only their own type, right? That's part of the process is learning about your own type, but part of the process is learning about the other 8 types
Yes.
because it allows you to sort of have that humility of like, maybe I'm not, maybe the way I did it isn't the best way for everyone, but it also allows you to have compassion,
Yes.
and understanding of other people. And so it really can take us kind of out of our ego, just understanding and learning about the other 8 types. And it can be such a relief too. I mean, a lot of this work is
Right.
based around it moves you towards what we call liberation, the highest level of development, and this is liberation. But that liberation isn't, it's not repression, it's not ignoring parts of yourself, it's not controlling yourself all the time. It's freedom and it's relief.
Okay. And that's because you now understand how you're having the why you're having these reactions, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
just, instead of white knuckling it, you're like, okay,
Right.
let's see why I'm
Yeah.
doing this.
And we have all of these, these beliefs we pick up throughout life. So, for
Hmm.
instance, the white knuckling may come from a belief of, if I don't do it, nobody will,
Okay.
right? And so, what we do is we'll take something like that and we'll hold it up and we'll say, is this fair? We'll do some work around it, to the point where you're like, if I don't do it, somebody will, or it won't get done, right? So, you're just like, this maybe isn't my responsibility. Maybe just because no one else
Yeah.
seems to be doing it right now doesn't mean that I have to start doing it and take that up,
Yeah.
carry that mantle. So, in doing that, someone like an Enneagram one, like me, is going to feel a huge amount of freedom, of
Right.
just free energy, spare energy. The body is going to be more relaxed. There's going to be less tension in the shoulders because you don't feel like, you're in this, you got to do it all yourself. Um, the sort of red flag for the one is personal obligation. So that's when the one knows that they're moving out of their sort of ideals, their higher ideals of fairness and, these, integrity and wisdom. And the core fear of being bad or corrupt
Hmm.
has started to seep in. And so then to avoid that feeling, to disprove it, they start taking on all these different responsibilities out of a sense of personal obligation.
Right.
And then that is what starts to wear the one down. Um,
Oof.
and
Yeah.
so if you're an author, it's like saying, well, I have to go on this crusade in this industry right now, because no one else is doing it. It's like, well,
Right.
are you the right person for it? Is it going to be effective? There's a lot more questions we can ask before that personal responsibility derails your writing for the next week.
Yes. Yes. Or you get disappointed that no one wants to listen to you right now because you might. I
Yes.
wonder if you guys always ahead of the time as ones? Are you kind of like the
No,
first people?
no, actually it's an interesting thing with the ones. Ones tend to be, so ones are kind of the rule developers and
Okay.
rule enforcers often of society, in that we want rules because that's how you make things fair. We
Oh,
really
okay.
value
Okay.
fairness. And so we'll create rules. And if someone else created rules that we don't like, we'll change those. We'll spend time changing those. We'll say, that's not fair. That's not just. I don't like that. We're going to change it, based on my, ideal, whatever.
Right.
So ones are rule creators, rule enforcers, not necessarily rule followers.
Oh, that's
if
interesting.
if the rules don't make sense to the one will not follow them. The
That's
one will say, I
interesting.
think I know better. I think it's fine to change lanes without a blinker when there's no cars on the road, right? So that's the kind of one mentality. So sometimes ones are ahead of the game. Sometimes ones, depending on how much fear is inside of them and how much self-awareness they have, um, they can be very, sort of like the conservative and like the true sense of the word of like,
Right.
let's keep things the way they are.
The
Like, we
way they
don't
are.
need to, like, things are good, but only with the things that they like. So sometimes ones can right. So it's the sense of right and wrong of the one comes from inside. Whereas there are
Right.
other
Right. Right.
types that, like, the six is a rule follower. The six is the loyalist. They will follow the rules. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to rock the boat, and they don't want to target on their back. So they're very good at rule following, and they don't have as much of that sort of internal drive to change the rules,
Okay.
if they
Yeah.
think they're unfair, because that's just not where their attention is flowing.
But that's
So,
interesting to know because again, I think it helps you understand people because our gut,
mm-hmm,
our knee-jerk reaction, at least in America, is like, oh, you're a hypocrite or you're this or you're that because we're judging constantly on like how
mm-hmm,
people are from however we think they should be, right? And so
right,
if you understand that there is a difference between those who are creating rules to make them more fair versus those who follow the rules that are already there, like that's a whole different personality, right? Like that's a whole
right.
different worldview.
Yeah,
uh
it helps a lot to kind of understand, especially, just in the industry itself. looking at
Mhm.
the people who are on stage, who are, who are positioning themselves as experts, and being able to sort of anticipate, like, why are they doing this? Do they
Yes.
know why they're doing this? Do they know what need is trying to be filled? Are they mindful of that? Because sometimes if we're not mindful of our core fear and our core desire, we end up seeking it in very weird ways, seeking the desire in very weird ways, avoiding the fear in very strange ways, and that can that can be very detrimental to follow
Mm.
a leader who is unaware of that, because if you attach yourself to them too closely, you will likely be pulled down when they sort of undermine themselves.
Right.
So we want to make sure the term that sometimes uses spiritual bypassing. um, we want to make sure that the people who are up there are also doing the work. Not
Yeah.
like I've done the work never ends, but they're actively doing it, because when they're in that process, they're able to receive feedback better. They're able to, they still surround themselves with people who will say, hey, this seems off. Let's
Right.
reconsider this.
Right.
Um, there are a lot of people who have cut all of those people out of their life because they just don't want to hear it. It hurts their ego too much. So I think
Yeah.
that understanding this just to navigate the industry and know who to listen to, who to, maybe like, oh, they have some good tips, but like I'm not going to become a groupie, right? Like that
Yes.
can be really helpful.
I heard you say that I don't know when, a while ago, before we were all open and able to go to in-person things. And that really resonated with me of like, because you can't control whatever the person on stage is, what work they've done, right? Like
Hmm.
I half the time, I don't know. I love listening to
Hmm.
psychologists and,
Yeah.
personal work, and business and whatever, all that stuff. I love it. But having heard you say that, I was like, that is a whole different perspective of being in the audience, whether it's in my car or physically, and thinking, okay, this is good, this is not, or like that might be
Hmm.
good for them. And it helped, like it freed me, to use your term, of being able to parse out what would be good and what wouldn't be good for me. And
Hmm.
like just give and weirdly enough, sometimes we just need that permission, right? To not
Yeah.
have to take everything that this person, that America loves to put people on stage, right? And so they must know everything. And to just realize, like, okay, um, maybe I'll take some of this. Because it sounds like who you've been working with authors, like this is a real needed issue in this industry. If people have been making a lot of money and now they're not, what does that mean?
Hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
world upside down situation, right?
Right. And the thing that I really love about the Enneagram is it basically gives us a map, because
Okay.
the truth is that a lot of the things that we think are healthy are not.
Mm,
So a
interesting.
lot of things that we think are these healthy expressions of something, the Enneagram, you can kind of say, okay, well, here's this type is sort of the type that goes up and down in this range around these sorts of behaviors. And
Okay.
really, this is maybe like what we call an average behavior. So there's 9 levels of development. 3 are healthy, 3 are average, and 3 are unhealthy.
Ooh.
And so sometimes a group or an industry or a family or a country will start to value behaviors and thoughts and feelings, and say this is this is how you win with this thought, this feeling, this attitude. And those actually are very low on the levels of development. And so we
Oh, that's
aspire
interesting.
to the wrong things in that way. We aspire to, like, um, there are certain cultures where it's actually praised to be kind of cutthroat,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or this sort of like work yourself until you're tired. Like, how badly do you want this kind
Yeah,
of
it's kind of
attitude?
America. Like we
Well,
don't
yeah,
actually take
that
things.
does come from the type 3, which America is a type 3 overlay as a country, but really, like, capitalism is more of that type
Yeah.
3 overlay, and America is just built so much on that. And so, yeah, but even like some attitudes, like you just need to give of yourself constantly,
Mm,
right? Just be selfless. You need to be that selfless giver. Um, we internalize those. We think that those are like great things, right? The Enneagram tells us that being the selfless giver is not sustainable.
right.
You can't say, I'm going to give to everyone and just hope that my needs are met by other people. It doesn't happen like that. And
Yeah.
there are certain needs that only you can meet for yourself. So those are the kinds of patterns that, you may hear someone up on stage espousing one of these views that is widely held as like, yeah, this is what success looks like, or this is what it's like to be a good woman, or
Yeah.
this is what it's like to be a strong man. Um, and you can kind of refer back to those levels of development and be like, nope, this person's going to crash and burn if they
Oof.
don't change.
Right. Oh, and that gives you so much more, again, freedom to just be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I know where that's coming from, and no, I'm not going back there. So what can we do in this industry? I've been talking, um so I went to the Future of Publishing, which I thought was great. There's a great group of people. I mean, especially people that I feel, it was a smaller group, of course, but people who are really wanting the career, like the
Mm-hmm.
sustainability, um, wanting to do this forever. They like to write, they like to create stories, right? And so you don't want to burn out, and but you also do have to make a business out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone there, we all sort of had that feeling of like things feel like they're changing a lot, right? Because they have changed so much
Mm-hmm.
since 20, I mean, I feel like every
They've
five
always been
years
changing.
it's
Yeah,
been
they've
changing.
always been changing, and they've always been changing a lot. Yeah,
And they will change
they
more,
will
right?
continue to change. Yes.
So it's almost hard then to tell um, writers what to do. When people ask you, I'm sure people ask you, how should I do this? What should I do? Everything lives on forever. So, the pull out a book a month still lives on internet world. People can find that. Some people still do it. The rapid release. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know anyone who continues personally. I don't know anyone. But newbies come to me all the time with like, this is what I've found I should do. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
please don't die. I think you you should
Yeah.
slow down, right? So
Yeah. I
how
mean,
have you like brought that together to help us not
the
implode, I guess?
best I can do is help people slow down
Okay.
and consider the decision making process.
Ooh. All right.
So considering the context, considering the reality that they're dealing with of
Mm.
like, oh, but this is how you make money. I'm like, this is how two people have made money. And this is how
Okay.
200 people have burned out, you know? Um,
Interesting.
and just helping them become more aware of why they are making that decision,
Okay.
which is Enneagram is a motivation based. It tells us our motivations. It tells us what we've been trying to get without realizing we're trying to get that. And so, really bringing our attention back to that and being able to pause. But I think that the skill that so many people need that they don't have right now, and it is a skill, is flexibility
Mm.
because of the change. That's what you need. You need to,
Okay.
you can't have a tree that's completely rigid. It'll get blown over, the roots will pop out, right? You need a tree
Okay.
that is flexible, that can bend with the wind. And that's kind of what we want to do. And so a lot of people, when they start out working with me, and this was also me when I started doing this work, are very rigid. Um,
Okay.
and it's because they're caught in these patterns of thinking, feeling, behaving that they haven't seen, and so they can only work within those confines. And our Enneagram type, when we haven't worked with the self-awareness and self-knowledge of it, it's blinders. It creates blinders on us, so we can only see the things that trigger our core fear, or stoke the craving of our core desire. Like, that is what our brain has been determining is relevant to bring into our
Yeah.
awareness.
Okay.
And so we've limited our options greatly in that way.
Interesting.
And so when things change and the options that we can see have been exhausted, we are prone to a meltdown or a freak out or I quit and never coming back, because we're like, there's nothing left to do. I've done everything. There's nothing I can do here, right? And there's nothing that is less inspiring to try than feeling like there's nothing you can do. So
Yeah, that feels like a dead end.
right. So when we do this work, what we're doing is we're kind of taking the blinders off of our type.
Okay.
The type is sometimes called a lens. We filter all the information through it
Okay.
and determine what's relevant based on what is our core fear and what is our core desire. So when we can bring awareness to that, slow down, learn to recognize when we're being triggered with fear or when something really looks like a, nice shiny object that promises us our core desire, we can start to notice that and go, hold on a second, the blinders are coming back on. Let me see what else is out there. So
Mm,
it's, you know, there's this balance between learning to say that's not for me and um, unlearning the sort of behavior of I only have these options, right? So you
right.
don't want to say, you could say most things are not for me,
Okay.
but there are probably more things for me that I'm seeing right now.
Interesting. Okay.
And really learning to balance that. And that comes from mindfulness about how we make decisions. It comes from understanding that the way we've always made decisions is not the only correct way to make decisions.
Right.
Um, and so, as long as you can do that and you don't get too stuck in your
Okay.
patterns, it really doesn't matter what the industry is doing.
Okay.
Um, if you can let go of just say, I really don't like the ethics around AI, but I want to tell stories. So, how do I do this in a way that feels ethical to me?
Hmm.
Or ethical enough. Maybe you've been holding on to the hope of moral purity, which spoiler alert, no such thing in this complicated world. There's like a, pretty
Yeah.
hilarious episode of The Good Place where, they talk about this. The judge and, you know, in the afterlife goes down to earth and comes back and is like, wow, there is no way to do that correctly.
Yeah.
um,
No.
and so, but if you are, say, a one, then you're searching for moral purity to your detriment, right? You're looking
Okay.
for a,
Okay.
a perfectly moral solution in systems that don't allow it. And
Right.
you can get really attached to that, and that can keep you from doing anything. And so
Right.
the process for that is being able to forgive yourself and say, I can still do things that don't 100% align with, my rigid ideas of right and wrong. Um, and I can still be a good person because I'm doing the best I
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
you
Because
know?
you live in this world.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes. So
Well,
it's
that's
really the
interesting though.
fear that
Yeah.
keeps us rigid.
And it's the fear, I guess for that one, it's the fear of how you see yourself more than
Oh, for
anything.
everyone it is.
Yeah. Okay.
People
That's
are afraid
interesting.
of how they will see themselves.
See themselves.
Um, right. So there's this concept of the idealized self in Enneagram,
Okay.
and each type has this idealized self, and we're doing a lot of things to preserve this ideal image of ourself.
Interesting.
Um, and so when we can let that go, because that's our ego, that is us basically at at your service, ego. I will do all kinds of songs and dances to make sure that you're protected and you can still think of yourself in this way. um, and so that can really get in the way of a lot of things, and it gets in the way of purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really interesting because I can see how once you understand all of those things, the ability to stand in the middle of an ever-changing industry and not feel completely demoralized and
Mm-hmm.
insignificant really goes
Mm-hmm.
up. You feel like better about okay, because
Right.
you're saying like as long as you're able to be flexible because you now see that you're not serving your own ego and you're not running after your fears or your shiny, what did you call it?
Mm-hmm.
The
There's
your
sort of
ideal.
shiny objects. Yeah.
Because
The
everyone's
ideal
has a different
self.
one, right? Like that
Yes.
shiny object's different for everyone.
Yeah, and the ideal self is very complex, sort of like
Okay.
senior level Enneagram stuff, but it is there. But yeah, I mean, we can, if your idealized self is, let's say for a three, the achiever, it's going to be like, I am an effective person or I am a successful person. And so, to a certain extent, that can be very beneficial because if I am this, then I do things that this type of person does. Right. If
Right.
I'm an effective person, then I am very effective in my life. And if I'm a successful person, then I care a lot about success in my life. Right. And that can get you the success you need, but it can only get you so far
Mm-hmm.
because you're missing out on a lot of things. Your filter is dismissing anything that doesn't feed that idealized self-image, which is most things. So you're missing out on a lot of life.
On like living your life. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see. Yeah. And so I can see too how you if you don't understand these things, it's going to be pretty rough to sustain this career, honestly, and live a life that you look back on that you're really content with, because I am an Enneagram 3 wing 4. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I have to individualize everything for everyone, and then I never do enough, ever, every day. Right, so like
Right.
that's the bottom part of it. And but if I before I understood that, it was like cramming my personality into, well, I have to, stop and smell the roses or something, because somebody
Mm-hmm.
told me I had to do that one day, or like
Right.
listening to other people, and it's just like it wasn't working. I had to find my own way that will make me feel satisfied and also feel like I'm living my life, right?
Yeah.
Am I making sense? Is that
Oh yeah,
correct?
absolutely. Yeah. And especially for the three, it's you're you're trying to figure out what the rules are
Hmm.
for the people around you, and then be the best at those rules. Right?
Right.
It's like,
I
what is
know
the
it's
game we're
horrible.
playing? Okay, now I'm gonna win it.
Yes.
And
Or I'm
so
not going to
if
play it.
right, or you're not gonna play it. But you can end up trying to win too many games at once,
Yeah. Yeah.
for too many people. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what happens when these rules conflict? What happens when I can't please both people and both sets of rules? And that's where a lot of the energy drain comes from, which is what wears us down over time.
Right. And then I at least was like, fine, I'm not going to
Right.
play any of your games.
Yeah, you have to quit, stupid games, stupid prizes. And so, you
Right.
just, the only way to win is to not play. And so, how do you not play though? Easier said
Yeah.
than done, right? So we
Right.
want to look at like, how do you build things, build your own, your own set of rules, your own, procedures and that sort of thing for yourself. And I'm sure as you found out, there are all kinds of people saying this is the way to success.
Yes.
And then you end up trying a bunch of them and probably none of them work because we have to kind of find our own way.
Yeah. And I think, especially as authors, I mean, it's in your own life, right? But it's also like, so I think the Enneagram's great in your own life. But then as authors, and this idea of sustaining, and there are, just like you just said, there are lots of people saying this is the one way to do this as far as anything goes. And I'm sure you've seen this. I work with writers who come to me and ask for help, and I come to other people and ask for help. And it's like every time somebody thinks there's a way, I'm like, I have a contrary story for you.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. People coming to me absolutely stressed out, like eyes bugging because they're like, I just can't write something once I outline it. And I'm like, stop outlining it. Like,
Yeah,
you
just start
just
writing.
described what you can't do. So let's not try and do that.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
we
bored.
don't,
Once I outline it, then don't
yeah.
do it.
Oh yeah. I don't know how many sevens the enthusiasts have come to me. Like I outline it and I love outlining it that I hate writing it. It's like because you're already done with the idea. It's not novel anymore. You got
Right,
to
right.
save it,
Yeah.
and
And it's
keep it
okay.
exciting as you're writing it.
Yes. Yes. I love that. So when is the Senior Author Career going to come out? That we are chatting now. This episode is coming out in May, but it's not out yet. But your Kickstarter's
Yeah.
done. So like where
Yes.
can people go?
Yes, when this episode releases, you can go to the Kickstarter page, or I'll have it up for which will have a pre-order link, or I will have it up for pre-order wherever books are sold. So it'll
Okay.
be not just Amazon, but Barnes Noble and Kobo and all of the
All the
places.
places.
Yeah,
Because you still don't get out of doing that, even if you know how to sustain your author career. You don't get out
yeah,
of doing it everywhere. But are you going
yeah.
to also have are you still doing workshops this
Mhm.
year? Are you doing retreats
Oh
or anything?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So I have a lot. I have a retreat coming up in October, which
Okay.
may still have seats. It's a small retreat. This is a boutique retreat.
Oh, I like that.
And yeah, so it's 11 people and me. And we spend
Nice.
3 days together, half days, doing just workshop stuff on Enneagram and their author career. And then you get the afternoon to hang out and all the room and meals and everything are paid for. So it's kind of a nice little getaway to reset and then
Yeah.
return to the world. So that is in October. I also will have the Liberated Writer 5-week course. There's going to be one in October. I may do one over the summer. I have to decide.
But they can
I
go to
have to decide how much I
FFS
want to.
Media, right?
Yeah. So for the Liberated Writer Retreat and the Liberated Writer course, which I think are like the ones that go the most with sustainability right now, you can just
Okay.
go to liberatedwriter.com and that will
Okay.
take you to both
We'll
of
put
those.
that. We will put that link in the show notes, and people might want to get on that before election season, really. Like, I feel like we always live in
I
election
honest,
season in America.
yeah, but no, guys, this is gonna be a bad one.
Just like, I guess you're saying we can't just put our blinders on and not pay
You
attention to
can, people certainly do.
everyone copes somehow. But um, but yeah, I think this is a great way for people to be have a little bit more personal armor maybe going in and not seeing the repetition of anxiety, stress, whatever cycle they went through, right?
Right. Yeah, you can
Just
get
right
yourself
now.
out of those cycles. You'll start to recognize them. And a lot of this, as we liberate ourselves, what we do is we connect deeper to ourselves. We connect
Okay.
much more deeply to our head, to our heart, and to our body. And in doing that, we are able to connect more deeply to other people.
Yeah.
And so you cannot connect to people more deeply than you can connect to yourself. So you can, in working on your connection to self, you open up this ability to have these deep connections, and deep connections are what we need.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
So
say that
that
that would
is,
make the most difference, right?
yeah, because you feel like whatever happens, I don't have to do this all on my own. So I talk a lot about, there's part of this work that we did, that I do with authors. Only you can do that for yourself. But that doesn't mean you need to do it alone. In
Mm,
fact, you need support to be able to do the work inside. You need support from other people. So finding other people who, in my courses, I encourage people, hey, find people that you liked in the live calls and the Q&As and stuff. Create it, like they usually will create a Discord chat, get to know people, find people that you want to meet with regularly because they'll understand this language. They're also doing this work. They'll hold
right.
you accountable and they will make you feel like you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that's really how we can make the world a better place, honestly. And
Yes.
then we add our stories
Yes.
and it'll be great.
Yeah.
We can do this. We
Right. Especially independent authors have this idea of like, I just do everything on my own, but that's not how it
Yeah.
works. That is not sustainable. We need support. So as much support as you think you need, double it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe we'll make that the show title now. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for coming in and talking to us about your new book. I'm very excited to get it. It's going to be my summer reading. Do a
Oh,
little work
yay.
before we get back into school, and
Just a
then we
little
can
light reading.
light reading, work on self. I think that's a great time to work on self, next to the
Yeah.
pool, if I can
Oh,
find a
for
pool.
sure. Yeah, this is definitely, yeah, by the pool. I mean, pool reading looks different to everyone, right?
Yes,
I like reading about serial killers by the pool, but that's
I can see that. I'm a number three though. All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, we'll have the links in the show notes for where people can find you. And good luck on the rest of the Kickstarter and this launch.
Thank you so much.